Are you ready for an explosion of paintball videos? Then stay tuned to paintballaccess.com because the CXBL is back for their 10th anniversary season. Catch all the best pro talent north of the border as teams battle it out in full X-Ball matches. Paintballaccess.com, on the field, in the pits, behind the scenes.
Welcome to the breakdown, brought to you by paintballaccess.com. I'm Matty Marshall alongside Todd Martinez. All right, so here we go. It's going to be the second half of Sunday. We're going to break down for you guys today. So first up, champion semifinal matchup, Todd. It was San Antonio XFactor versus Omaha Vicious. I'm just going to let you take this one. How was it?
We came out and we kind of executed the same game plans that were working for us all throughout the event. And I thought we really took advantage of XFactor early. And we ended up going up.
Take advantage. You were decimating XFactor off the break. That was, they dug themselves a hole. Okay, first of all, XFactor played pretty much the entire event just spotting whatever other team was playing. It didn't matter who it was. They're just like, all right, you guys have 4 or 5 points. And then they came back and won a ton of those games. Yeah. But that particular game, when you guys played them in the semifinals, the first, I think, 3 or 4 points, they just, I mean, you guys were shooting 2 of them off the break. It was really bad, and they didn't know necessarily how to react to that. It looked really good.
Yeah. So we go up 5-1, I believe it was, yeah. And then Shane gets a major going into the snake on the 5th point, you know, in the 5-1 point, and we end up getting a major, and XFactor comes back 3 straight points to make it a 5-4 game. And then I think we might have scored the 6-4 point, and then they tied it up 6-6. And on that 6-6 point, our pit crew guy goes running out to go pick up the pods, and we earn a minor. And we play 4-on-5 in the 6-6 point, but end up shooting a guy on the break and winning the point. But I mean, it was scary there for a second.
It was it was one of those super dramatic games. First of all, every game that XFactor played was super dramatic. I mean, XFactor, they came back against Infamous and won. They came back against Damage and won. They were just that team this event, and it was really cool to see. And so XFactor did actually get knocked out by Vicious, and Vicious advanced to the finals, and we'll get to that game in a second that they played. But XFactor, the reigning 2013 PSP World Champs. Dynasty won the Series Championship, but XFactor ended up winning the World Cup, and they did it in a dramatic fashion in a come-from-behind victory against Edmonton Impact. And they had a really good event, but it was one of those really scary events for them because they went down so many points to start out. But it just kind of goes to show you how intense those guys are in those point-by-point situations. And when we talk to Archie, and we actually have an interview with Archie on Paintball Access, so check out paintballaccess.com, and Archie talks about this, and he says, look, we treat every point as if the score does not exist. It doesn't matter. We know that we can run up 5 or 6, maybe even 7 points on a team, so even if we're down points, we try not to get mentally defeated. Speaks so much to the strength of their focus this year, and also at the end of last year. So that's really cool to see if you're an XFactor fan, but if you're a Vicious fan, Vicious has never been to the finals, and you guys taking down the reigning World Cup champions to make it to the finals was just, after having seen Vicious play for so long, I was so happy for you guys to make it to the finals. I have a lot of friends on XFactor, and I really respect that team. So I was kind of completely ambivalent about what happened, but at the same time, when you guys did end up winning, I was very much impressed because I know how hard it was in practice leading up to the event.
Yeah, well, I mean, plus we watched XFactor play all weekend. I mean, they won World Cup, and then they win their first 4 prelim matches, so we know we're in for a fight.
Yeah.
And then we get out there, and we get off to a good start, and then we get a major penalty, and they rattle off 3 points in a row on the major penalty before we're actually able to get back out of the box. So, I mean, it was a tough fight, but, I mean, we knew there was going to be a battle going in against XFactor, and watching them and the games that they played all throughout the prelims, able to fight back against really good teams.
Now, did you talk about that with Vicious? Like, hey, if we go up points on these guys, they've been coming back this entire event, so I'm going to need you guys to really get it together out there.
Not really. No, we were just like, we're going to execute our game plan, and we're going to be fine. And that's what we did, and then we came out and got a penalty, and that kind of hurt us. And, it was good for us, though, because we got that penalty and then lost those points. That was a learning experience for us. I mean, it's not like we haven't gotten majors before and had to fight through them, but getting that major penalty after going up that big and in that type of game in a semifinal matchup, I mean, you have to be there. You have to go to that level in order to understand. It's the same thing like going to the finals. Yeah. We felt like in the finals, we very easily could have won that tournament, but a little bit of inexperience, a couple bad breaks, it being 30 degrees, it didn't help at all.
We'll get to the finals in a second. I definitely want to hear about the finals game.
Right, but just, like in that semifinal matchup, it was great because we learned what we learned from that semifinal matchup. And by beating a team like XFactor, it was really good for us, and it's going to help us for the future.
So before we move on to talk about the next semifinal matchup, honestly, were you a little bit happy when you won that game against XFactor going into the finals? Like, okay, Vicious has never made it this far in the top, at the very tippy top of the pyramid. Yeah. We're heading into play for the finals. We got a legit chance. We just beat the world champs. You must have been a little happy, right?
Well,
I know it's not your first rodeo. Yeah. You've been here before. You've won these tournaments. You've coached in these situations. But it must have been a little fulfilling knowing how hard it was. I mean, you guys got stomped by the Ironman in practice. You got stomped by Damage in practice. And that was difficult. But then all of a sudden you find yourself in the finals at the event in the Champions Division playing all these hard-hitting teams. It must have been kind of a little cool, right?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you about the Texas Storm practice in a second, but absolutely it was. I mean, for this team to perform at that level, for guys like Zach Sherman to step up, Parker Rosenthal, Shane Colby, new guys like Alex Borromeo, and then, all of the other guys that contributed, Brian Bortle, Matt Sossman, everybody contributed. Everybody really came to play, and if it wasn't on the field, it was in the pits. We really came together as a team, and I thought that all the hard work that we put in, no matter the beatings that we took, I feel like guys kind of took it to heart and came out this tournament with something to prove.
Well, if you look at the practice report that we did, you can go back and check out our YouTube page, check out the practice report we did with Vicious. I mean, you were kind of losing it in these practices because you understood what they're capable of. You know what these guys can do if they're in their right head and motivated to perform their best. And so knowing what is possible, you were very hard on these guys. You were making them do push-ups. If they didn't communicate, you were making them run, suicides at the end because you felt that, look, I need to punish you guys physically because you need to wake up mentally. And this is what it takes. And it's kind of impressive because that's what paintball is all about. It's such a good story. Vicious has had that, Cinderella amazing story coming through divisional ranks where they beat everybody and won all the different divisions and made it this far. And then for, a long time now, they've been in the pro division and not been able to fulfill that dream. And they still obviously haven't won the tournament yet, haven't won a professional tournament yet. They did win some Challengers Division tournaments last year, but that's not Champions Division. So they finally made it to the finals. But to beat the World Cup champions after all the practice you guys had, I mean, that to me is an amazing paintball story, and it just shows you what's possible with hard work and mental tenacity.
Well, to the point of your original question, I was definitely, super happy for the players, because the players have never been there before. I've been there before myself, as a player and as a coach, but it was kind of different, having that feeling. I definitely felt a sense of accomplishment for the players and what we were able to achieve at this tournament. But as happy as I know that they were, and as happy as I was for us to get to the finals, it was kind of funny because they still definitely didn't feel that was the end. And even though we weren't able to win the tournament, again, that accomplishment helps take that next step, for the belief that you're capable of winning a tournament.
Well, let's get to the finals in just a second. First of all, let's talk about the other Champions Division semifinal matchup, and that was between Los Angeles Infamous and San Diego Dynasty, which was the lowest scoring game out of all of the Champions Division games that we saw, and it had probably one of, if not the most dramatic finish. No, let's just call it. It was the most dramatic finish because Oliver Lang. Let's just set the scene. There's 15 seconds remaining in the match. It's tied up 6-6, heading into overtime, essentially.
Yeah.
And we're up there in the booth basically saying, and anytime in that situation, I was like, okay, well, they're probably going to let the time run out. It's going to go to overtime. Overtime's going to be 3 minutes. If we don't get a victor on Sunday, and that overtime's going to be one-on-ones. We're begging for one-on-ones because that's always super dramatic and fun to watch for everyone at home too. So that's kind of what the scene we're hoping that's going to play out. Well, the guys that went out to start that point for Dynasty, in particular Oliver Lang, they were like, no, that's not what's going to happen. We're going to try to score this point in 15 seconds, which is incredibly fast, even on this particular layout, which we had seen an 11-second point. So Dynasty goes out, shoots a couple guys off the break, and then they shoot another guy. And then Oliver goes and runs and grabs the flag and is about a half a second away. And if you go back and watch the game, it's a pretty amazing matchup. And he dives, and just as the time ends, he literally is flying through the air completely horizontal and hangs the flag. And we thought, at least watching it live, that he had hung it in time and had won the game in 15 seconds and had taken Dynasty to the final in another outstanding.
Just like last year.
Just like last year when I think it was Spica that hung the flag. But Oliver was on that run through too. But regardless, it was an amazing finish. But no, he was a half a second, and you could see it in the replay. He was a half a second away from hanging that flag. So they go to overtime, and then Infamous wins it, and Infamous goes on to play you guys. What did you think about that game?
I mean, I could not believe that. The whole time I'm watching that 15-second point, I'm like, Dynasty's going to do it again, just like last year. And, fortunately enough, we have instant replay now. I ran up to the booth to go watch the instant replay, and you see Oliver Lang, and the cameraman caught it just perfectly. In the corner is the scoreboard with the clock, and you see Oliver, just as he jumps, reaches out, it hits 0, and I'm like, overtime. This is going to be great. I mean, it was a battle the whole way. I mean, that was the 3-3 point, and we did not see hardly any games that one went to time, two were as low scoring as 3-3. So the games back and forth, and it's not just that it was a 3-3 game, but every single point was a grinder. There was no kind of real blowout points. Every single point was like one body, back and forth.
And I think that's kind of what's amazing to see when you have two teams evenly matched at that level playing in a super important game like that in the semifinals, was we hadn't seen a game even close to those numbers. We hadn't seen a 3-3 game yet. We'd seen, I think there had only been at that point, I think 1 or 2 games that hadn't gone to the 7, to the race to 7. And so when we were watching that kind of play out, it was one of those amazing matchups where if you're a paintball fan, you're kind of astounded because every single gunfight, every single move was calculated, was very intense, and those subtle little things that were happening out there that. And that makes sense, though, because Dynasty, the 2013 season champs, they won 2 tournaments last year and took second in Chicago. Kind of fell off towards the end of the year. They actually got skunked and shut out in 2 separate matches, which we hadn't seen happen in World Cup. So they came this year fired up. And it was just cool to see Oliver play that well. It was cool to see Dynasty themselves as a core. They lost Rusty as a coach. And they brought Brad Mon in, who I felt did a really good job of instituting Rusty's system. And it's Brad Mon. Brad Mon's got a high paintball IQ. He's been around forever. He knows those guys. So it was really cool to see that Dynasty's still here, man. Dynasty went undefeated in the prelims, and then they almost won the semifinal matchup. So it was to me the most dramatic game the entire weekend, and just a big pleasure to watch. So if you haven't seen it yet, you definitely need to watch that matchup. So then the stage was set. It was Omaha Vicious against Los Angeles Infamous. Omaha Vicious never making the finals before. They finally get a chance to achieve that paintball dream that they've been, just really working incredibly hard for a long time. And then Infamous, they haven't won a tournament since Chicago 2012 when you were coaching the team. Brad McCurley had that, just heroic sudden death overtime, 4 kills against Moscow Red Legion, kind of breakout performance for Brad McCurley. And there's so many storylines on Infamous. So that was an awesome matchup to see. We'll get to that in a second, but definitely want to say congratulations to the divisional finals and the guys that won those games. Because on Sunday that's how it works. You get the relegation games, and you get the semifinal matchups, and then you get all the divisional finals. And it was cool. The Thunder Ducks took down Combat Houston in the D4.
Yeah, right from the jump off, Thunder Ducks came in and just handled biz against Combat Houston. I think that like I said, from the jump off, Thunder Ducks were just ready for that game, and they came in to prove a point, and they handled their business.
Yeah, and then in the D3 finals, it was Houston Zone against Chicago Warped.
What happened that game?
Well, it was kind of interesting.
I kind of remember.
Chicago Warp goes up 3-1 against
3-1?
Houston Zone. I think it would. Let me get.
3-1.
3-1. And we cut to Lauren on the sidelines with an interview with Chicago Warped, and their guy was like, "We got this in the bag. It's 3-1. We're gonna roll these guys up." I can't remember exactly what he said, but that was pretty much the gist of it. And then, sure enough, here comes Houston Zone, who just storms back 3 straight points, and they win that race to 4. And I actually got a message from one of the guys that was on Chicago Warp, like, we're going to execute this guy.
Don't say that.
Yeah, you never want to tempt the paintball gods like that. Chicago Warp, they tempted the paintball gods, and sure, what happened?
Yeah.
Retribution happened.
Lasoya said that when I got back up to the booth after our game against XFactor, when it was 5-1, he said he was about to text me and be like, "Hey, congratulations," but thought better of it and waited. And I was like, "Thank you, good call."
Yeah.
Because you want to be like, "Hey, good job, it's in the bag." You never. It's
The
not
paintball
over till
gods
it's
are a
over.
real thing, man. If this is your first time around the block, like, we've seen this happen so many times. You never want to do that. The game is never in the bag. After it ended, you actually said, "Yeah, we're going to need the guy who has the win in his bag on Chicago Warp to take it out of his bag and give it to the other guy's bag because they actually won the game."
Yeah.
So yeah, that was great to see. And then in the D2 finals, it was Project Mayhem taking down Louisville Asylum.
Yeah, Asylum fought back. Project Mayhem went up. Asylum started to come back a little bit, but Project Mayhem was definitely too much for Asylum there in the end.
I just love watching the divisional finals because these are the future pros. This is a story we've seen play itself out year after year after year. You have, Houston VCK played great in the Challengers division, and that's a big. It's tough, man. It's a tough jump up. Everything becomes way harder. Every single time you notch up, it just gets that much more difficult. So, hats off to all these guys that take the plunge and move up these ranks. But that's the cool thing about the PSP. There's a division for every single, regardless of how long you've been playing the game, D4 all the way up to the Champions Division in the professional level. There's a level for everyone to play. So, go to pspevents.com. The next event is coming up May 2nd through the 4th, and get your team in the fight. We pretty much sold out the first event, so make sure you sign up ahead of time and assure yourself a spot to play at the Mid-Atlantic Open against the best in your division. And then D1 finals, AC Dallas, Greg Pauly coming through 5-4 against Trade My Gun Outlaws. Jeremy Somm and Mike for Trade My Gun, that's a strong platform, man. Trade My Gun Outlaws are no joke. And that was an awesome game to see. And again, D1, that's that step right before the Challengers division. And so these could be the guys that we see, eventually make their way up to the professional level.
And we did see some former pros playing that game as well. Brandon Mayo, Cody Mikowski, guys playing in that have been there and done that before. They're trying to lead these groups of younger players up to those upper ranks. And, that was another good game. AC Dallas went up, and then Trade My Gun Outlaws, they fought back a little bit, made it close, but AC Dallas was just too much in the end.
Yeah, no, it was good. So let's move on to the Challengers Division final. It was Art Chaos taking on Upton 187 crew. Upton 187 crew, past couple years, they've been earning their stripes in the professional division. And as we've talked about in previous breakdowns, I love Upton 187 crew. If you're a fan of taking your boys from your hometown and seeing how far you can take the paintball adventure, you can't help but love Upton 187 crew. It's just one of those awesome stories. They're from the middle of nowhere. Upton, how many people can point Upton out on a map, right? But the fact that they have just understood, look, we are good at this. We've worked hard at this. And they keep getting better and better. Eddie Painter is no joke. That guy out of the backfield, his field vision has really, just every time I see him play, it keeps getting better and better. His style is very fluid. I love how Eddie Painter plays the game. I love watching him play. Also, Dan Zaleski and Max Traylor, when they first came up into the professional division, those were kind of the first two guys, and Nick Laval, who we recognized as guys that really are going to help carry that team. But now they got guys like Greg Lazat and then also Matthew Jarula. Matt Jarula, that guy is, I'm telling you, Matt Jarula is going to be good. Yeah. If he keeps working hard, like what I saw out of him in the games that we were able to watch him, Matt Jarula is pretty good. But they played Art Chaos. And, I mean, if you look at the guys on Art Chaos, that's a straight murderer's row of paintball players. No joke. I mean, championships, Top Gun titles, best player in the world, whatever. I mean, Konstantin Fedorov has been arguably one, if not the best, depending on what list you check out. He hasn't won the Top Gun title in the past 2 years, but he doesn't care, man. That guy is...
Still got 200 kills.
Yeah, he's got yeah, I mean, just... It's Konstantin Fedorov.
Yeah.
Alexander Bernikov's on that team now. He was the 2012 Top Gun title holder, finally came over from Moscow Red Legion. I just can't wait to see our Chaos finally match up against everybody in the Champions Division and see actually what they're going to do here in the States. They've been wrecking shop in Europe. They finally got their crew together. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be exciting to see how they play. I mean, like you said, they got the listed names, they got the guys, they got the titles.
They got the support.
They got everything, so... their bracket could be very, very brutal next event. Are they going to dominate that bracket, or, are the teams that are in that bracket with them going to come and try and show them that, hey, we don't care about the hype. We've seen you guys before. We know how you play. But, I mean, that's what the Champions bracket's all about.
It's the best of the best, man. Unarguably, the best paintball players and the best teams in the world play in the PSP Champions Division. There is no argument. Everybody knows that. So, yeah, our Chaos has assembled this particular roster. They made the move. They had to start in the Challengers Division. They decimated everyone. They only lost 5 points in the entire event, and they look good doing it. And another interesting thing, too, was when Fedorov was being interviewed, he kept saying, oh, we have these young, up-and-coming players, getting them playing time. And we saw a couple of those guys out there doing some work. So that tells me that's a little scary, actually, because if they can get those guys even just up a couple notches and with their starting 5, like that's a no-joke potential championship caliber team. It remains to be seen. That's why I can't wait to see MAO. Yeah. MAO is going to be ridiculous. And we expected this out of Art Chaos. They showed up. They proved themselves. They did exactly what everyone thought they were going to do. They are going to be in the Champions Division, but Upton 187 crew is too, as well. So let's move on to the final game. It's Infamous taking on Omaha. And since you were there, man, you were there ground level. I mean, obviously I got to watch the game. It was awesome to see. Infamous did end up taking the victory. But how did it feel there, kind of, coaching from the pits, working with the Omaha guys? They'd never been this far before. What was it like in there?
Well, honestly, I want to start off with that Texas Storm practice. We go down to practice Texas Storm the weekend before the event and get a Friday, Saturday, Sunday practice. And we go down there Friday. Nothing's ready. We have to set up the field ourselves, go get our paint. It's kind of cold. And we set the whole field up, and throughout the day it starts to get warmer and everything starts turning out nice, And it was a fun day. We did a lot of drills. We worked really hard on
just
learning
played
the
against
field.
Yourselves.
Yeah, just doing drills with ourselves, and I thought that was great for us. And then we show up on Saturday, first thing in the morning, and it's 30 degrees, and the field's a little bit rough, and I don't want to get any injuries before we get out there. So I'm like, okay, we're not going to dive into anything. We're going to run and gun everywhere we go. So we were just running and gunning everywhere, and it worked out really well for us against Texas Storm. And I thought we just beat the brakes off of them the first day. And Texas Storm, I know they got a lot of smart players. They got Justin Schwartz, Mark Johnson. They got a lot of very active snake players.
Shane Howell. They picked up Shane Howell this
exactly.
year.
Shane Howell, Sean Salcedo. Guys that white. Dudes that just want to get up there and get going. Clint Johnson actually hurt himself. Running through the middle of one of those games. But, it was definitely good practice. We know those guys are fearless. They're going to come at us, And then we played them on Sunday, and, and it was like kind of the same thing. It was still kind of, pretty cold. But, traded games back and forth. And, every time we played Texas Storm, things get a little feisty, and that's great because it makes for a good practice. Mm-hmm. So, I felt pretty good after that practice playing the layout. And then we got to the tournament, and it was kind of cold again. So I was like,
hey, we've been here before.
Same rules apply.
Yeah, Texas again.
Yeah, let's
same
go.
thing.
Yeah. So, I think that having all the practices we did, the weekend against Damage, the 2 weekends against Ironman, and then that practice against Texas Storm, definitely helped us a lot, get prepared because, you take some beatings and you try and learn from it. You try and build off the things that you have worked on the year before, in the off season, try and take advantage of all the things that you've built on, throughout all those tournaments together. And I think it was finally a combination of the fact that the years that this team has been in the league, the practices that we had, being fed up with being mediocre and really wanting to go out there and prove a point, that really helped us step up and believe in ourselves and, have a bunch of guys that were just ready to go and take it to the next level, and then we got some big performances out of our rookies, bringing Alex Borromeo in. I thought that he was a great pickup for us. And then, we brought Nicky Vegas on the team, and, we really didn't even get to set Nicky Vegas out on a tear yet, but, he was such a contributor in the pits, being a positive attitude and, that experienced leader that, I love having him around, and all the guys on the team that, that have been with Vicious from the beginning, those guys were out there with something to prove, and it showed. Zach Sherman, Parker Rosenthal, Brian Bortle, those guys really stepped up, and I was really proud of the way they played. We go up, we win a one-on-one in the first point. The second point comes down to a two-on-one.
Yeah, Zach Page loses a one-on-one to Zach Sherman. Yeah.
The second point, we come out, it's a two-on-one. Alex Borromeo actually trades with Zach Wake in the corner, but Alex gets shot and bounces Zach Wake. Shane Colby and Zach Wake end up trading out, so it's a no point. And then the second point, things were still close throughout the beginning of the match, and then there was the big penalty situation where we had to stop the whole match and figure that thing out. And I felt like, not that we had momentum, but coming out of that big penalty situation, I think Infamous was more prepared for that because they had been there before. They'd been in the finals. They were really hungry for that. And it's just hard to say that, once that whole thing happened, I'm not exactly sure what exactly that it was, but, we were constantly fighting from having penalties, and that hurt us, so.
Well, and also Infamous, I really feel they'd had enough. 2013 was not their year. They underperformed. I believe they took 7th overall. They were 7th overall last year, and that is just not where Infamous wanted to be. They came into this year with you talk about chips on your shoulders. When we talk about what it takes to be a top-level paintball player, you have to have a little bit of that edge. You have to have that chip on your shoulder where in between those nets, you're the god. You're the one that is going to go out and decimate everything that lays in front of you, because if you don't have that intensity, if you can't come with that focus, you're not going to be able to defeat the guys that are trying to steal the glory from you in these big level games. We're talking about the finals in Dallas. This sets the tempo for the entire year. Yeah. What team comes out on top, who does well at the first event, that kind of just sets the tempo, sets the pace for the entire season. And Infamous, they're over it. They had told me in that practice against Shock, and I talked to a couple of them where they were completely just walking over Shock in that practice on Thursday before the event. They were like, they call it. They didn't call the win, but they were like, this year is going to be different. We've had enough of this. Yeah. This whole underperforming thing. We're over that. And I was like, all right, well, show me. And they, sure enough, then they came out and they looked great. And Zach Wake, talk about redemption. Zach Wake, this is a guy who last year got cut from the team that went on to win the world title because he got too many penalties. He had struggled. He has been on 7 different pro teams and got the reputation as hard to work with, got a big head, you name it, penalty machine. And then not only that, he finally was able to get back on Infamous. They brought him back, lucky for him, when he got cut from XFactor. But then he blew his hamstring out, tore his hamstring at the end of last year. He couldn't even play World Cup. And he had to basically sit that whole last part of the season and then just wait in the offseason, chomping at the bit to have another chance to prove himself, and had this big, awesome, amazing 180 transition, reflect on his flaws and fix those things. And he came back, and in the finals, he had 13 confirmed kills, which equaled the record set at the Dallas Open by Colt Roberts from San Antonio XFactor, and he was the finals MVP. And the whole team from Infamous played amazing. But Zach Wake, particularly, knowing how hard of a struggle that he had to get back and reform his reputation, work on his flaws, the fact that he, in the first event coming back, has already kind of made his statement to the world, like, look, I'm a new player. I'm a new man. I understand what self-imposed hurdles have been in front of me. I'm clearing those out, and I want to be a top player. He finished 7th overall in the statistics out of the entire league. And Infamous themselves, I mean, they had some of their guys like Bobby Aviles and Nicky that had, Nicky had a great prelims, but because other guys were playing awesome, he, was like, yeah, man, he got a couple points in, but he, Infamous across the board is a team that has come to play some paintball this year. They're the early favorites for sure. Obviously, they won the event, but they proved it. Great roster. They picked up the Bornsteins. They Zach Patience back from his blown ACL, and they got Wake back, who is now ready and focused to be a top-level player again. That's going to be a scary team for the rest of the league.
Yeah, well, I mean, to your point, like you said, you always talk about expectations. Infamous versus Vicious in the finals. Infamous has been there before. They know what it takes to win, and they had been preparing for that situation all offseason. I mean, these dudes were driving to practice all over the place.
In the snow, 3 hours, didn't matter.
They flew out to San Diego to practice Dynasty, and it was the one weekend it's rained in San Diego all winter, and it's pouring down rain, and they didn't care. They're out there just to learn, practice, get better. But, the expectations of those guys from the very beginning of the off season until Sunday afternoon was, we are coming here to win tournaments, and a little bit different with Vicious. We say, we believe that we can win tournaments, but to be able to get to that level, is showing yourself that, yes, you are, but, the mindset and the belief and the understanding of what it takes to get there and then to perform at that level, Infamous definitely had that edge. I mean, I remember winning that tournament in Chicago with Infamous in 2012, and it was like kind of the same feeling that we had with Vicious. Like, hey, we know that we can do this. We haven't done it yet, but we believe that we belong here. And it's just up to us to prove it. And, with Vicious, it was like, we know that we can make that step. And then we got there and we believed it. But, we run into a team like Infamous who has been there, done that, and know what it takes to win. And it was just a little bit too much for us. But the takeaway from that whole, situation is with Vicious now, hey, we know what it takes to get there. And we do believe that we can win one of those tournaments. And we're going to prepare with that mentality, like we're going to come in and win.
Look, winning is contagious. Doing well is contagious. The fact that Vicious has now made it to the finals, and the fact that Zach Sherman, Parker Rosenthal, Shane Colby, Bortle, all of those core members, Borromeo, new guy on the team, the fact that those guys played as well as they did, made it as far as they did, is very impressive. I'm very proud of all those guys. It was awesome to see, and now the rest of the league is forced to respect Vicious as a top-level pro team.
Yeah, and I want to give a quick shout-out to my man Trevor Reeser, because Trevor Reeser was kind of the leading force in our attack. Honestly, he played the whole event with the flu. He was out there sick, and I played him every point that he could actually breathe and wasn't dying on the sidelines. But, his belief and, taking his game to that next level, was really contagious to the whole team. He was going out there, just dying sick every night, doing everything he could, and plus it's 30 degrees out there. It may not show up in the stat sheets, but, I mean, he really played his butt off out there.
Everybody did on that team. Yeah. It was very impressive. You don't make it to the finals unless it's a team effort. Yeah. It just doesn't happen. But so congratulations to Vicious taking second place. And Los Angeles Infamous, they are the early favorite as they take that victory 7-3 in the Dallas Open finals. I can't wait to see what both those teams bring to bear here at Mid-Atlantic Open. Again, sign your team up. Go to pspevents.com, May 2nd through the 4th. It's going to be on us before we even know it. I can't wait. So we got more breakdowns coming for you guys as in the weeks preceding the next upcoming event, Mid-Atlantic Open. Thank you guys for tuning in, man. And again, congratulations to Los Angeles Infamous. They fought long and hard for that. The coaching staff of that team, Greg Posey, Travis Lemansky, he's the guy that team reason even exists still. And also Dan Wake came out to help out. And just stand-up performances across the board from Los Angeles Infamous. They take the victory. Thank you guys for tuning into the breakdown. See you guys next time.
This is the Earth. The Earth is beautiful. Earth is where we play paintball. It is important to recycle in order to save the Earth. Do not recycle custom paintball jersey designs. Get what you pay for. Get a fresh original design at rosalife.com.
are massive opportunities, both for the sport of paintball and for your business. If we are successful in taking our sport to another level, unite with Paintball Access in our quest to elevate paintball and broadcast it to the world. There are advertising packages available for any size business. Join us. Advertise with PBA and help us change the sport for the better forever.